internal knowing that it's my way of being of service. And there's been lots of times like Blue Era, I started on my credit card, Maurice, which is ridiculous. Like, who starts an organization on their credit card and then it becomes just it became a wild success by doing things differently, by following intuition. And same with Awakened Company. But it's that intuitive thread. It would have been much easier to stay at the company, which was an amazing company before Blue Era. Would have been easier to stay at Blue Era. Like, it feels like the universe is constantly pulling and pushing me to do new things. And it's uncomfortable.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my podcast, The Intuitive Leader. I am Maurice Jenkens, and with me today, I have a very multi-talented guest, Catherine Bell. We're going to talk about intuition and leadership and awakened companies. Catherine is the CEO and founder of the Awakened Company that helps organizations create healthy corporate cultures. Before that, Catherine founded Blue Era, a Profit 500 executive search company, which became a top 200 growing company in Canada. After Catherine sold Blue Era to DHR, a global consulting firm, she shifted focus to awakening the fire within organizations and founded the Awakened Company, now working globally, including with Fortune 500 listed companies. In 2022 alone, her work with organizations on strategy and corporate culture spanned 23 countries. Catherine's work has been published in Fortune, HBR, Profit, Conscious Company magazine, Women of Influence, and she has written for the United Nations. And now she can add to that already impressive list also that she has been featuring on the Intuitive Leader podcast. Jokes aside, of course, Catherine, big, warm welcome. It's so good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Maurice. It is an absolute honor and pleasure.
It's so funny, Catherine, because one of the first things that you told me when we spoke for the first time was, I told my assistant, no more podcasts. And then 1 month later, we're here.
Well, you were so compelling. I couldn't help it. I could not help myself because the topic, I think, is so important. And I think what you're investigating is needed now.
Yeah, and that makes me the lucky one. So I'm happy for that. So just to dive into it straight away, according to you, what is intuition?
Intuition is the individual unconsciousness and collective unconsciousness that becomes conscious. It's a form of when we get those lightning strikes of knowing. It is important to pay attention what we do with those lightning strikes. Are we actually and acting on them, or are we not? Because I believe everybody has those unconscious hits that then become conscious because all of a sudden they enter our being. Are we paying attention to this intuition? And there's been times in my life where I've paid attention and times at my peril when I have not paid attention.
That's interesting. So each time I have a guest ask what my guest's definition of intuition is, it's so funny that each time I get another version of it, so to say. And this was a really interesting one. Thank you for sharing that. In terms of intuition in leadership, why is it so important for leaders, CEOs, company owners to care about this?
It is so important for leaders to care about this because it can make or break our organizations. For example, when hiring, are we paying attention to our intuitive hits? Are we paying attention in terms of products, services, to where the universe is guiding us, or are we not? And so our intuition gives us access into a portal of newness, of freshness, of creativity. And if we do not pay attention to it, I would say we do it at our peril. If we do pay attention to it, I would say it opens up innovation for our organizations, innovation for who we hire, innovations for how we create together.
Mm.
You can kind of, sometimes I'll shut my intuition down. One time it was early in my career, and I was invited into a partnership, into an executive search firm. And my intuition said, no, not the right time, not the right time. Yet I went ahead and kind of forced it. I forced entering this partnership because everything on paper made sense. Yet it was the wrong time in my life to enter that partnership. So it had make or break. Not listening to my intuition had make or break implications for my career. However, what I chose to do is I chose to kind of learn from the situation. And
right.
It can be both. And I also think it's very important to use our body centers as leaders. Like, are we using our gut, our heart, our hands with our intuition? Because it's one thing to receive intuition. It's another thing to then actualize it. And if we pay attention to our intuition, the universe will give us little strings to pay attention to. And when we pay attention to the universal clues, that's often when we're most in harmony with what is most needed. And leadership is all about the other and elevating the other. So interesting. Our intuition, when I said, taps into this collective unconscious, I think it also serves the people we work with and for.
Yeah. And how does it feel for you in that example when your intuition told you not to go ahead with a certain partnership, and you said you forced it? How did that feel? What was the inner experience in Catherine when you sort of overruled your intuition? A heavy sinking feeling, yeah.
Heavy sinking feeling. So as I was signing on the dotted line, and it had nothing to do with the partners, it had to do with the stage I was at in my career and the potential that was there. It was a heavy sinking feeling that I experienced, like, this is not the right thing to be doing. However, the opposite has been true in my experience. So let me give an example, a personal example. So I'm sitting in a dimly lit cafe in New York City, Maurice, and all of a sudden it was like lightning bolt just hit my head, the top of my head. And you're to write a book called The Awaken Company. And I was just like, what? I had just started Blue Era, this executive search firm. And I'm like, what? And to my colleague, Carolyn, I said, Carolyn, I'm to write this book called The Awakened Company. And she turned to me, her face just lit up. And she said, oh, yes, you are. Now, the journey from that to what actually was created was very nonlinear. However, I paid attention. It would have been easy to shelf that lightning bolt that hit my head, to just say, okay, I'm too busy being a mother. However, I paid attention to that lightning bolt. So are we paying attention to those lightning bolts in our lives that can really, it was to use a sports analogy, it was a TSN turning point. Like, it was just like, it shifted my entire life after receiving that.
Yeah, and I call that the listener's reward. If you dare to listen to it, you'll reap the rewards. And how did that feel when you went ahead with your intuition, when you were aligned with it, if you like?
The feeling was a lightness, of energy, of a sense of stick-to-itness too. So it wasn't always easy, Maurice, from there. Like, writing a book is not easy. It took 7 years to write the book. It took, many years to cultivate the culture at Blue Era of having amazing culture and financial results. Yeah. However, it was that lightness of being, that sense of play that kept me going. And in many ways, that lightning bolt is still with me. Like, this is what you are actually here to do and here to help people with. This is why you're on this planet. So it's that collective unconscious, meaning my consciousness, that's just, really awakened and empowered me. It's something else. It's not me. It's definitely not me.
Yeah, it's very interesting when you say a sinking feeling, a lowering, a sinking feeling. I feel that's actually my experience too. When I go against my intuition, it's a lowering, sinking feeling. Whereas if I go with my intuition, it's sort of an expanding feeling or a lifting feeling. It's lighter. And it's not the same thing as joy or happiness. It can create joy and happiness, but the underlying drive, if you like, is lift instead of sinking. It's difficult to put words on it, but I'm happy that you did. I can jump on that bandwagon.
I often think people get intuitive hits at the most unlikely times. So it may be a walk in the forest. Yep. It may be, and often teams get ideas when they're not in the office. About us relaxing that I think allows the intuition to enter. So, relaxed body, I think, is very, very, very important. And another thing that I think is very, very important in terms of trust, because when we trust something, everything goes faster. If we don't trust something, it's like we're imposing a tax on the system. And we do this to ourselves and within our teams as well. So when we trust ourselves, everything can go faster. When we don't trust ourselves, everything is slowed down. However, as leaders, we need to know that that's also implied when we work with a team. It's just magnified. So how do we trust? I do believe in the importance of data. It's very, very, very important. So here's a piece of data. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. 85% are repeating, 95% are negative. So if we know that this is the data on how we think, 60,000 thoughts a day, 85% repeating, 95% are negative. What are we feeding our being? What are we feeding our soul as leaders? What are we feeding in terms of trusting ourselves? We are listening to things that are inaccurate. We are voicing things that are inaccurate to ourselves. So the importance of data, the importance of feeling, like actually getting in touch with our heart, and then having the will to carry on when it may not be easy. And I often ask, Maurice, here's a very important question for everybody, is when we get the intuitive hits, is what is the tiniest thing that I can do to empower my intuition and what came to me, the knowing that came to me. And it's just really, life is all just a series of baby steps. So how can I take the intuition and also take our micro thoughts and empower and plant them with good things?
Yeah, you said something really interesting there. Well, not just one, a couple of things, but one of them is that if you don't trust yourself, the team, yourself, your own decisions, you're sort of slowing yourself down. You're putting a tax on yourself. That was your wording. So if you trust, it goes faster. There's actually a book written called The Speed of Trust, by the way. But there's also, as you said, you're putting a tax on your team, your performance, and how fast things go, because you constantly need to check it, double check it, I guess, if you don't trust each other. How did you come up? How what's your story, if you like? Where, because we all have seen a couple of winters by now. We have that experience. We have had our own internal journey. Were you born with high levels of trust and high awareness of intuitive hits? Is this something that has been growing on you throughout your life? Or, I mean, obviously today you're definitely on a certain level, but that may have come from experience or from hard work, or how has that evolved for you?
Our first leaders are our parents. My parents were both very intuitive, and my mother still is. My father's unfortunately passed, but she's been an example. My mother's been an example for me in trusting intuition. And I also, in the leaders we work with, when there's a thread of intuition and we pull on it, intuition is a key to why we're all here. Our own belonging, meaning, and purpose, actually, really purpose for why we are on this planet.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as far as I see it, the intuitive hits, as you call them, they are very much connected to purpose and what's meaningful and what ultimately brings you joy or satisfaction or a sense of, to be fulfilled in life, not just to survive, but also to thrive. And I do believe that intuition is key in that. There are actually a lot of studies on that as well, that people that made life choices in alignment with their intuition were years later more satisfied with their choices than people that didn't. So there is, it's. I think people know that at some level, but it's good to say it too. And here I have a question for you, maybe a tough question, in the sense that sometimes it is actually easier to ignore your intuition. It's easier to put a snooze button, if you like. Sometimes intuition can really put you out of your comfort zone, and it's a little bit scary. It's a little bit unnerving to go into unknown terrain, do something you haven't done before, start your own company, for example. And it's not the same thing as fear, but it's a little bit it's a bit scary. Intuition is not there to just keep you in harmony only. Do you have an example in your life when you went with your intuition, but it took guts to go with your guts, if you like?
I'm a serial entrepreneur. I can't help but to create businesses, and leaving an executive search firm that was, one of the top 10 executive search firms in the world to start our own, an executive search firm called Blue Era. We started it based on, we believe Blue Era is about, when you look at the planet, it's blue. When we started Blue Era, I still do believe it, that the whole emphasis is going to be on the planet. But to start that when I had a young family, when I had a very cushy job, when, everything was easy, is a bit crazy. However, we wanted to do things differently. So I believe.
Tell me about it.
And the same with Awakened Company. I'd built this amazing, it wasn't just me, we had built this amazing company in Blue Era. And then leaving it to start Awakened Company to help with corporate culture, that's another risk. And now I have an app called Awakenly, which partners with a lot of the stuff we do. And that's another risk. However, I know internal knowing that it's my way of being of service. And there's been lots of times like Blue Era, I started on my credit card, Maurice, which is ridiculous. Like, who starts an organization on their credit card? And then it becomes just it became a wild success by doing things differently, by following intuition. And same with Awakened Company. But it's that intuitive thread. It would have been much easier to stay at the company, which was an amazing company before Blue Era. Would have been easier to stay at Blue Era. Like, it feels like the universe is constantly pulling and pushing me to do new things. And it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes. And I can relate to that, by the way. The story you just told, to leave your job, well paid, and start your own company with hardly a plan whatsoever. Yeah, and a family and a mortgage and all that. So, and now I'm here, talking about intuition. That wasn't exactly like thought through either. That was purely following my intuitive hit, if you like.
Maurice, here's another interesting thing that just kind of came to me is, how do we pay attention to the intuition of others? So, for example, my aunt said to me, she was working at Korn Ferry, one of the largest executive search firms in the world. And she said, Catherine, you were to study with a person called Russ Hudson. You must study with him. And now he's my collaborator and business partner in the creativity book. But I think there's also this thread of intuition, is we not only must we follow our own, we must pay attention to other people's intuition. And I'm paying attention to your intuition in terms of your reach out on this. No more podcasts, then I meet Maurice. Okay, I'm going to do this,
Yeah, it can come various ways, right? It doesn't have to be just through your own intuitive mind. So, about your company, you've dropped the name a couple of times. Why do customers, and they are global, so why do customers come to your company? What do you offer them? What are you helping your clients with? And I'm talking the Awakened company.
Our clients, in terms of awakening self, relationship, and team. So the specific methodologies that we use, though, are based on business research, my practical know-how of being in the seat of the CEO, and wisdom traditions. And it's that merging have really empowered our clients and really helped them to step into the things that they want to do.
So self, team, and culture.
It's self, relationships, and culture, because relationships, Maurice, is often the piece that's missing, the one-to-one relationships. Yet we know from business research how long somebody stays and how productive they are is in direct relationship to their direct report. So that's a relationship. And we don't pay enough attention to the cultural glue, which is our relationships. So individual. So we teach transformational leadership. We teach on relationships. We teach things like conflict resolution. On culture, I was recently working with an amazing company that reaches over 1 million people a year personally. And we help them with their vision, their values, and then how they're going to do it. And most importantly, though, the culture that contains their organization. I'll share with you the business research. And I think it's super important to bring business research into actualization. There's a knowing doing gap when it comes to the business research and businesses actually implementing it. Here is what every leader should know. We need to focus 2/3 on corporate culture, 1/3 on financial results. So often I get organization CEOs who come to me and say, Kath, can you take me from 0 to $1 billion like you did that other company? Well, no, that's the wrong focus. The focus needs to be, what problems are we solving and how can we align our humanity to achieve that objective? Because I believe organizations are forces for good and the way we're going to solve the challenges that we face. However, it's only by organizing differently that we will do so. So 2/3 focus, corporate culture, 1/3 on financial results.
Yeah, and that sounds absolutely spot on if you ask me. So how do you make that case for, let's say, a new customer? Because when I have my Swedish mindset here, most of the CFOs or CEOs here in this country, an engineering country, the first thing we'll ask is like, okay, what's it going to give? Where's the return of investment? And culture, yeah, we need it, etc., blah, blah, blah. But, we need money, basically. I'm now really playing the devil's advocate here. So how do you explain that to those kind of people? Because there are quite a lot of them, at least here.
So I use data. The fact that most businesses don't survive shows that we're not doing things the right way. There's a different way to do things using the business research. Begin with self-awareness, then relationship, then culture. So for example, I often speak about leadership, and only 10 to 15% of leaders are self-aware. Yet we know the more self-aware a leader is, the higher performing they are. I'm working with one of the largest organizations in the world right now. And one of the things we're doing first is people are creating personal visions. Because how can we create a team vision if we don't, as individuals, know where our ship is headed? And also the financial results are very much aligned with what I'm saying. However, people don't know. So often, again, it's this knowing doing gap, and we're stuck in this automatic. When I meet a CEO and they said, "Can you take me from 0 to $1 billion like you did that company?" Well, I explained to them, I won't work with you if that's your only focus, because it won't get you anywhere, but it will possibly kill your organization.
Oh my. That music to my ears, really. Oh my God. If we are moving towards closing off, and what would you want the listeners, viewers, you to remember for? So if they would walk away after this podcast and they would think of Catherine Bell, what would you want them to think of first?
I would actually want them to think of themselves first, and that I've had a positive impact on their lives. That there's something from this podcast, for example, that they will walk away with that they can apply to their lives. And it's only by actually having an impact on each other that service happens. So I'd want to say, yeah, she had a positive impact on my life and helped me become a better leader and a better team player.
And you know what I'm going to add to that? I think that this helps creating engagement on a personal level. So we are, as we all know, the Gallup polls are showing that every year again. We're like what is it, like 13 or so percent, or maybe 20% is actually engaged at work in what they do. That number, I would bet that number increases when you start working with organizations, because the way you work sounds to me, at least, that it increases the engagement of people, their why, their purpose, that they actually see something bigger than just a 9-to-5 job. That's at least what I'm tasting, hearing when I hear you speak.
Yes, definitely. Engagement, because we don't get our moments back, Maurice. You use the words taste and sound, because I think those are clues to really getting into our intuition.
Yeah. Thank you. There's something called reading the room, right? And there is this, the reading the room is listen to your body signals, listen to what your senses are telling you. And that's not logical, but it is putting words on those senses.
And that's almost, what you described is actually reading ourselves. And we have so many senses. We have our sight, our smell, our taste, our hearing, our feeling, and then we have our inner subtle body senses as well. So reading ourselves to read the room, I think that's very powerful.
Yeah. Catherine, if people want to find you or your company, where would you want them to go to? And the links are here in this text, but you can still say them.
Awakenedcompany.com. Please sign up for our newsletter. We often recently we just gave away a whole bunch of webinars to people. So please sign up to our newsletter as well. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, especially with all of our upcoming books, because it's so exciting.
2 new books coming up, one on creativity and one on how to execute the why into the how at work, right?
Ultimately, as leaders, we are measured by our execution. So the next book, business book, is here's how to actually do all of this, which I'm super, super excited about.
Wow. Well, Catherine, on that note, thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you so much for having me and for being so compelling. And I think what you're doing is so, so, so important, Maurice, this use of intuition and leadership. So thank you.
Catherine, thank you so much for being my guest today. So interesting. And to all of you, if you want to interact with us and join live interactive sessions, you can ask questions, comment, or share your stories. You are very welcome to do so. Join our free community for the Intuitive Leader at intuitiveleader.net/podcast. Scroll all the way down to register, and the link is in this episode as well. If you are further looking to strengthen your intuitive leadership, please check out my program called Decoding Intuition. For now, thank you so much for listening in, and see you back soon. Bye.